Commander Vexitar pressed his four-clawed hands against the observation deck's reinforced viewing panel. His black eyes, adapted to see through the perpetual storms of his homeworld Kethmore, watched the tactical display with growing unease. The red dots representing enemy forces were moving closer to the mining colony of Xerion 7, and their own blue dots seemed so few in comparison. "Status report!" he growled through his translator, the mechanical voice carrying none of the natural rumbling threat of his native tongue. Around him, his bridge crew of fellow Kethmorians worked with practiced efficiency. Their thick, armor-plated skin gleamed under the harsh artificial lights, each warrior bearing the ritual scars of survival from their brutal homeworld. Lieutenant Jakra looked up from her station, her own battle scars crisscrossing her face like a map of violence. "The Hive ships are 3 hours out, sir. Colony evacuation is at 60%. Our defensive fleet is holding position, but we're outnumbered 4-1. Vexitar's inner jaw clicked with frustration. The Hive had been expanding aggressively across this sector for months, consuming everything in their path. Their insectoid ships moved like a plague through space, stripping worlds bare and adding the resources to their ever-growing swarm. Xerion 7 was just another target, but it held strategic importance and couldn't be abandoned. "Sir," Communications Officer Krelth interrupted, her scarred head turning toward him. "We're receiving a transmission from the Galactic Council. They're sending reinforcements." "About time," Vexitar snarled. "What forces are they deploying? More ethereal light cruisers? Zenthari battle wings?" Krelth's mandibles clicked uncertainly. "No, sir. The transmission says humans." The bridge fell silent. Every Kethmorian present had heard whispers about humans, the newest species to join the Galactic Council. Stories circulated through military channels about these strange creatures from a world they called Earth. Most dismissed them as jokes or exaggerations. Humans were supposedly from a Class 3 world, practically a garden paradise compared to the hellscape of Kethmore. "Humans?" Vexitar repeated, his voice dripping with disbelief. "Those soft-skinned creatures from that gentle blue world? What possible use could they be in a real battle?" The Kethmorians were proud warriors, forged in the crucible of their death world. Kethmore was a planet where the very air was toxic to most species, where massive predators roamed beneath blood-red skies, and where volcanic eruptions and toxic storms were daily occurrences. Only the strongest survived to adulthood. Their entire culture was built around combat, survival, and proving one's worth through violence. By contrast, every piece of intelligence they'd gathered about Earth painted it as an almost laughably peaceful world. Blue skies, gentle weather patterns, abundant water, and comfortable temperatures. The humans who had made contact seemed friendly, even naive. They spoke of art, music, and literature, things that had no place on the battlefield. How could such creatures possibly understand the brutal reality of interstellar warfare? "Sir," Jakra spoke up, "the human fleet is requesting coordinates for battle formation." Vexitar's laugh was harsh and grating. "Fine. Give them coordinates on the outer perimeter. Maybe they can handle evacuation duties while real warriors handle the fighting." 3 hours later, the human fleet arrived. Vexitar watched through the observation deck as their ships dropped out of hyperspace. He had to admit, they looked impressive enough. Sleek designs with clean lines and what appeared to be substantial armoring. But appearances meant nothing in battle. The real test would come when the Hive arrived. The human fleet consisted of about 30 vessels of various sizes. Their flagship, identified as the UES Indomitable, moved with surprising grace for such a large ship. Vexitar had fought alongside many species in his long career. The crystalline ethereals with their energy weapons, the mechanical Zenthari with their precise calculations, the reptilian Saurok with their berserker fury. Each had their strengths and their place in battle. But humans, they remained a mystery. "Incoming transmission from the human flagship," Krelth reported. "Put it through," Vexitar commanded. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing a human figure. Vexitar was struck by how ordinary the creature looked. No natural armor, no claws or fangs, no obvious adaptations for warfare. The human had dark skin, short black hair, and wore what appeared to be a simple military uniform. A small rectangular patch on his chest read, "Admiral Chen." "Commander Vexitar, I'm Admiral Chen of the Human Fleet." The figure spoke in accented but clear galactic standard. "We're here to assist in the defense of Zarion 7. "Admiral," Vexitar replied, trying to keep the skepticism out of his voice. "Your orders are to maintain position on the outer perimeter and assist with evacuation procedures. Leave the fighting to species better equipped for warfare." Admiral Chen's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind his eyes. "With respect, Commander, we didn't travel 3 weeks through hyperspace just to run evacuation drills. Our fleet is ready for combat." "Combat?" Vexitar couldn't help but laugh. "Admiral, do you understand what you're facing? The Hive doesn't negotiate, doesn't retreat, and doesn't show mercy. They've consumed 17 worlds in this sector alone. This isn't some diplomatic skirmish. This is total warfare." "We understand the situation perfectly," Chen replied calmly. "Commander, may I ask, what do you know about Earth?" The question caught Vexitar off guard. "Your homeworld? It's a Class 3 paradise world. Gentle climate, abundant resources, peaceful conditions. Hardly the type of environment that breeds warriors." Admiral Chen was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice carried a strange undertone that Vexitar's translator couldn't quite capture. "Commander, I think there might be some misunderstanding about Earth's classification, but we'll discuss that later. For now, we'd like to take point position when the Hive arrives." "Absolutely not," Vexitar said firmly. "You'll maintain rear position and—" "Sir!" Jacra's urgent voice cut through the conversation. "Hive ships are dropping out of hyperspace. Contact in 5 minutes." Through the observation windows, space began to fill with the nightmare shapes of Hive vessels. They moved like living things, their organic hulls pulsing with bioluminescent veins. Some were massive dreadnoughts the size of small moons. Others were sleek fighters that darted through space like angry wasps. All of them bristled with weapons that could dissolve matter at the molecular level. The sight would have filled most species with terror. Even the Kethmorians, hardened by their brutal world, felt a chill at the approaching swarm. These creatures had destroyed fleets twice their size. "Admiral," Vexitar said, his tone now urgent, "fall back to defensive positions. We'll handle the initial assault." But to his shock, the human fleet was already moving forward. "Admiral Chen, what are you doing?" Vexitar demanded. Chen's image flickered slightly as his ship moved into battle formation. "Something you might not expect, Commander. We're going to show you what humans do when someone threatens innocent people. This is insanity. You'll be slaughtered." Admiral Chen's expression hardened, and for the first time, Vexitar saw something in the human's eyes that made his own predator instincts stir. It was a look he'd seen in the eyes of the apex predators of Kethmor, the look of something that didn't just hunt to survive, but hunted because it was born to kill. "Commander," Chen said quietly, "you said Earth was a peaceful paradise world. You're not entirely wrong. But you might want to ask yourself, in a universe full of death worlds and warrior species, how exactly did a species from a gentle paradise manage to reach the stars?" The transmission cut off, leaving Vexitar staring at the tactical display in confusion. The human ships were moving into attack formation with precision that spoke of extensive combat experience. Their movements were coordinated, aggressive, and showed no hesitation despite facing overwhelming odds. "Sir," Jacra reported, her voice tight with disbelief. "The humans are requesting that we hold back and let them engage first." Vextar watched as 30 human ships moved to face down a hive swarm of over 200 vessels. It should have been suicide. It should have been the massacre of an entire fleet within minutes. But something nagged at the back of his mind. Admiral Chen's words echoed, "How exactly did a species from a gentle paradise manage to reach the stars?" As the first hive ships entered weapons range, Vextar realized he was about to learn something about humans that the Galactic Council's files had somehow failed to mention. Something that made Admiral Chen smile like a Kethmorian apex predator sizing up its prey. The human weapons powered up, and space began to light up with the glow of approaching battle. But instead of the desperate last stand Vextar expected to witness, something else was happening. The humans weren't fighting like prey animals cornered by predators. They were fighting like something far more dangerous, something that made the hive's approach falter for just a moment. As if even these consuming destroyers recognized the scent of something they had never encountered before. And in that moment of hesitation, Vextar realized that perhaps Earth's classification as a peaceful paradise world was about to be violently revised. The first salvo of human weapons fire lit up space like a newborn star. Vextar had witnessed countless battles in his 40 years of military service. He had seen the elegant precision of ethereal energy lances, the overwhelming firepower of Zenthari particle cannons, and the brutal efficiency of Sarok plasma torpedoes. But what erupted from the human fleet was something entirely different. The humans didn't just fire weapons, they unleashed destruction with a calculated fury that made even his battle-hardened crew step back from their stations in shock. "By the bloodstorms of Kethmor," Jacra whispered, her scarred face pressed against her tactical display. "Sir, their weapons readings they're off the scale." Vextar watched in stunned silence as human railgun rounds, accelerated to significant fractions of light speed, punched through hive bio-armor like it was paper. Each round carried the kinetic energy of a small nuclear weapon, and the humans were firing them in coordinated volleys that turned entire hive ships into expanding clouds of debris. But it wasn't just the raw power that shocked him. It was the precision. The human fleet moved like a single organism, each ship knowing exactly where to be and when. They used the debris of destroyed hive vessels as cover, bounced weapons fire off asteroid fields to hit targets from impossible angles, and employed tactics that seemed to anticipate the hive's movements before they made them. "How are they doing that?" Krelth demanded from her station. "The hive's movement patterns are completely unpredictable. No species has ever been able to—" Her words were cut off as 3 human destroyers executed a maneuver that defied tactical logic. They dove directly into the heart of the hive formation, taking devastating fire from all sides. Any sane commander would have called it suicide. Instead, the humans used the concentrated hive fire as cover, letting it destroy a cluster of hive ships caught in their own crossfire while the human vessels' shields absorbed what they couldn't dodge. Then, at point-blank range, they unleashed something that made Vextar's blood run cold: nuclear weapons. Not the clean, surgical nuclear devices most species used in space combat, but massive fusion bombs that turned entire sections of space into miniature suns. The 3 human destroyers rode the shock waves like surfboards, using the explosions to boost their acceleration as they broke free of the hive formation. "They're insane," Jacra breathed. "Those explosions should have destroyed their own ships." "Look at their hull design," Krelth said, her voice filled with growing horror. "Those aren't just armor plating. Those are radiation shields. They built their ships specifically to fight at point-blank range with nuclear weapons." Vextar stared at the tactical display, watching as the human fleet continued its devastating assault. The hive, which had seemed so overwhelming just minutes ago, was already down by 30%. But more than that, They were showing something he'd never seen before. Fear. The hive were retreating, not regrouping, not repositioning, retreating. In 40 years of fighting these creatures, he'd never seen them show even the slightest hesitation. They consumed and destroyed everything in their path with mindless determination, but now, faced with human tactics that seemed to embrace mutual destruction as a valid strategy, they were pulling back. "Sir," Jacques reported, her voice shaky, "Admiral Chen is requesting permission to pursue." "Pursue?" Vextar echoed. "They've driven off the hive. That's victory beyond anything we could have hoped for." "Admiral Chen says they're not finished," Krelth translated from the incoming transmission. "He's requesting our fleet move to protect the colony while they, and I quote, finish what the hive started." Through the observation deck, Vextar watched as the human fleet regrouped with mechanical precision. Their ships showed battle damage, but they moved with the same deadly grace as when they'd first engaged. If anything, they seemed more dangerous now, like predators that had tasted blood. "Put me through to Admiral Chen," Vextar commanded. The holographic display flickered to life again, showing the human admiral on his bridge. Behind him, Vextar could see human crew members working with calm efficiency. No panic, no celebration over their impossible victory, just professional focus on the task ahead. "Admiral," Vextar began carefully, "your tactics were effective. But the hive is retreating. You've saved the colony. There's no need for further engagement." Chen's expression was polite but firm. "Commander, with respect, the hive has consumed 17 worlds in this sector. They've killed billions of innocent people. This isn't just about saving one colony. It's about making sure they never threaten another one." "You can't be serious. You want to pursue a hive swarm? Even we don't attempt that kind of—" "Commander," Chen interrupted gently, "may I share something with you about human military doctrine?" Despite every instinct screaming at him to refuse, Vextar found himself nodding. He had to understand what he'd just witnessed. "There's an old saying on Earth," Chen continued, "if you want peace, prepare for war. But we have another saying that's more relevant here. When someone shows you who they are, believe them. The hive has shown us they're willing to exterminate entire civilizations, so we're going to show them who we are." "And who exactly are you?" Vextar asked, though he was beginning to suspect he already knew the answer. Admiral Chen's smile was cold as the void of space. "We're the species that spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of killing each other, Commander. We're the species that invented warfare, genocide, and weapons of mass destruction before we learned to control fire properly. We're the species that looked at our peaceful paradise world and decided it wasn't dangerous enough. So we found ways to make it more interesting." The tactical display updated, showing the hive fleet's trajectory. They were heading toward the outer system, probably planning to regroup and attack again later. "Earth might be a paradise world now," Chen continued, "but that's because we terraformed it into one. Before that, it was a death world that made most others look like vacation resorts. Ice ages that lasted millions of years, massive volcanic eruptions that blocked out the sun for decades, asteroid impacts that sterilized the entire surface, poisonous atmosphere, radiation levels that would kill most species in hours." Vextar felt something cold settle in his stomach. The Council files said, "The Council files describe Earth as it is now, after we spent millennia fixing it," Chen said. "But before we learned to work together, we spent those same millennia learning to destroy things. We got very, very good at it." On the tactical display, the human fleet was moving into pursuit formation. Their ships had sustained damage in the battle, but they showed no signs of slowing down. If anything, they seemed to be accelerating. "Admiral," Vextar said desperately, "even if what you're saying is true, you're outnumbered. The hive still has over 100 ships." "Commander, let me tell you about the Battle of Thermopylae," Chen replied. 300 Spartans held off an army of thousands. They all died, but they proved that numbers don't always matter. We've learned a lot since then." That's a story from your history? One of many. We have thousands of years of experience fighting against impossible odds. We've been doing it so long. We have songs about it, poems. We teach our children about the glory of last stands and impossible victories. Vextar looked around at his bridge crew. Every Kethmorian face showed the same expression of dawning horror. They were warriors from a death world, forged in violence and hardship. But even they had limits. They fought to survive, to protect their territory, to prove their strength. The humans apparently fought because they enjoyed it. "Sir," Jacques whispered, "the humans are requesting tactical data on hive ship weaknesses. They want to know the most efficient way to, and I quote, make sure none of them make it home." Through the observation deck, Vextar watched the human fleet disappear into hyperspace, pursuing the hive swarm with the relentless determination of apex predators following wounded prey. "Krelth," he said quietly, "send a priority message to High Command. Tell them we need to revise our intelligence files on human civilization." "What should I tell them, sir?" Vexatar continued to stare out at the empty space where the human fleet had vanished. "Tell them we were wrong about Earth being a paradise world. Tell them it's not a Class 3 world at all." "What classification should I give it?" Vextar thought about nuclear weapons used as close-range tactical devices, about ships designed to fight while bathed in radiation, about tactics that treated mutual destruction as an acceptable outcome, about Admiral Chen's cold smile when discussing the systematic elimination of the hive. "Class X," he said finally. "List Earth as a Class X death world, apex predator species. Recommend extreme caution in all future interactions." "Sir," Krelth asked hesitantly, "what if Command asks why we're reclassifying a planet with blue skies and gentle weather as a death world?" Vextar turned to look at his communications officer. "Tell them it's not the environment that makes a death world dangerous, Krelth. Sometimes it's the things that manage to survive there long enough to reach the stars." 6 hours later, long-range sensors detected massive energy signatures from the outer system. The readings suggested the complete destruction of over 90 hive vessels, with the remainder scattered and fleeing in all directions. The human fleet returned 3 hours after that, their ships scarred and blackened, but intact. Admiral Chen's final transmission was brief and professional. "Colony secure, Commander. The hive won't be returning to this sector. We're heading back to Earth for resupply. It was a pleasure working with you." As the human fleet disappeared back into hyperspace, Vextar realized that the galaxy had just learned something terrifying about their newest members. The humans weren't just another species seeking their place among the stars. They were something far more dangerous, a species of born killers who had somehow learned to pretend to be civilized. 3 weeks after the Battle of Zarian 7, Commander Vextar found himself in the most unlikely place he could imagine, sitting in a human restaurant on the diplomatic station orbiting Kepler 442b. The invitation had come from Admiral Chen himself, delivered through official Galactic Council channels, a simple message requesting a private meeting to discuss mutual understanding between our species. Vextar's superiors had ordered him to attend, eager to learn more about their mysterious new allies. The restaurant was called Olive Garden, and everything about it seemed designed to reinforce the image of humans as gentle, civilized beings. Soft lighting, comfortable furniture, servers who smiled and asked about his preferences. The walls were covered with images of Earth, blue skies, green fields, cities that looked more like art installations than military fortifications. It was all very peaceful, very reassuring. It made Vexatar's skin crawl. Admiral Chen arrived precisely on time, dressed not in his military uniform but in casual civilian clothes. He looked completely ordinary. Just another member of a species that had supposedly evolved on a paradise world. He ordered something called breadsticks and made pleasant conversation about the weather. "Thank you for coming, Commander," Chen said, cutting into what appeared to be some kind of pasta dish. "I thought it might be helpful if we had a chance to talk about what happened at Zarion 7. Vextar studied his own meal. Something the server had assured him was perfectly safe for your biology. It smelled pleasant enough, but he found his appetite had vanished. "Admiral, I have to ask, was everything you told me during the battle true?" "Which part?" "All of it. Earth being a death world originally. Humans spending thousands of years perfecting warfare. The nuclear tactics, the willingness to embrace mutual destruction." Vextar paused. "The systematic elimination of the entire hive force." Chen chewed thoughtfully before answering. "Yes, all of that was true. Though perhaps I should clarify a few things." He activated a small holographic projector displaying what appeared to be historical footage. The images showed a younger, more primitive Earth, but not the gentle world the Galactic Council files described. "This is Earth about 12,000 years ago," Chen explained. "As you can see, it wasn't exactly a paradise. Massive ice sheets covering most continents. Average global temperature about 15 degrees below current levels. Most of the planet was completely uninhabitable." The images shifted, showing what looked like primitive humans huddled around fires, hunting massive creatures with crude weapons. "These are our ancestors. No natural armor, no claws, no venom. Just intelligence and a stubborn refusal to give up. They survived by becoming the most efficient killers the planet had ever seen." "But your world is peaceful now," Vextar protested. "Green, blue, temperate. How did you—" "We fixed it," Chen said simply. "It took us about 10,000 years, but we gradually learned to control our environment instead of just surviving in it. We ended the Ice Age, stabilized the climate, eliminated most diseases, created sustainable ecosystems. We turned our death world into a garden." More images flashed by. Humans building cities, developing agriculture, creating art and music. It looked like the evolution of a peaceful, civilized species. "So you did become peaceful," Vextar said, feeling slightly relieved. Chen's expression grew somber. "Commander, in those same 10,000 years, we fought approximately 15,000 wars. We invented weapons capable of destroying our entire planet dozens of times over. We committed genocide against our own species on an industrial scale. We created military tactics so brutal that we banned ourselves from using them." The relief died in Vextar's throat. "The truth is," Chen continued, "we didn't become less violent as we became more civilized. We just became more efficient at it, more organized, more creative." He touched the projector again and new images appeared. Vextar recognized them as footage from the Battle of Zarion 7, but from a different angle, from inside the human ships. What he saw made his blood run cold. The human crews weren't frantic or desperate during the battle. They were calm, professional, almost bored. They executed maneuvers that should have been suicidal with the same casual efficiency as brewing coffee. When they fired nuclear weapons at point-blank range, destroying hive ships and risking their own lives, they did it with the detached precision of surgeons performing routine operations. "This is what you have to understand about humans," Chen said quietly. "We didn't conquer our death world by becoming tougher or stronger than everything else on it. We conquered it by becoming smarter, more adaptable, and infinitely more ruthless. We became apex predators not through evolution, but through innovation." "But you seem so peaceful," Vextar managed. "Your art, your music, your literature, the way you interact with other species, you're friendly, diplomatic, cooperative." Chen smiled. And for a moment he looked exactly like the pleasant, civilized being he appeared to be. "We are peaceful, Commander. We genuinely prefer cooperation to conflict. We'd rather build than destroy, create than kill. Most humans will go their entire lives without harming another living being." "Then how?" Because we learned something very important during our 10,000 years of constant warfare, Chen interrupted. Peace isn't the absence of violence. Peace is having the ability to destroy your enemies so completely that they choose not to fight you instead. He touched the projector once more. The final image was a star chart showing the local galactic sector. Red zones marked areas where the hive had been active. Blue zones showed human patrol routes. After the Battle of Xerion 7, we tracked down every remaining hive ship in this sector, Chen explained matter-of-factly. It took us 2 weeks. We found their breeding worlds, their resource depots, their command structures. We eliminated them systematically and completely. All of them. All of them. The hive as a species is now extinct in a volume of space roughly 50 light-years in diameter. They pose no further threat to any civilized world. Vextar stared at the star chart, trying to comprehend what he was hearing. You committed genocide against an entire species. Yes, Chen said simply. We determined that the hive could not be reasoned with, could not be contained, and would never stop consuming other civilizations. So we removed them from existence, cleanly, efficiently, and completely. Doesn't that bother you? Chen considered the question seriously. I sleep well at night, knowing that billions of innocent beings will never be consumed by the hive. I sleep well knowing that the children on Xerion 7 will grow up safe. I sleep well knowing that monster is gone from the universe. He leaned back in his chair, once again looking like nothing more than a pleasant dinner companion. Commander, let me ask you something. How many species in the galaxy would be capable of what we just did? Vextar thought about it. The Ethereals were powerful but preferred defensive strategies. The Zenthari were precise but followed rigid tactical doctrines. The Saurak were fierce but lacked the organization for systematic campaigns. His own people, the Kethmorians, were warriors, but even they had limits. None, he admitted. No other species would have pursued a retreating enemy across 50 light-years. No other species would have methodically hunted down every last survivor. Exactly. And do you know why? Because you're insane? Chen laughed, a warm, genuinely amused sound. Because we understand something that most species don't. Evil isn't defeated by being better than it. Evil is defeated by being more ruthless than it. Sometimes the only way to protect innocent life is to be willing to take life without mercy or hesitation. He gestured around the restaurant, at the images of peaceful Earth on the walls. This is what we fight to protect, Commander. Not just our world, but the idea that civilized beings should be able to live in peace. But we learned long ago that peace is only possible when those who would destroy it know they'll face something even more terrible than they are. Vextar looked at the other diners in the restaurant. Human families enjoying meals together, children laughing, couples holding hands. They all seemed so normal, so harmless. But now he couldn't shake the knowledge that these pleasant people were members of a species that had casually committed genocide to protect strangers they'd never met. What does this mean for the rest of the galaxy? He asked. It means exactly what it's always meant, Chen replied. As long as you're not threatening innocent people, you have nothing to fear from humanity. We'll trade with you, share technology, help build a better future for everyone. We genuinely want to be friends with every species we meet. He paused, his expression growing serious again. But if you do threaten innocent people, then you'll face something that no other species in the galaxy can or will unleash. Total, systematic, complete destruction. We won't just defeat you. We'll erase you from existence so thoroughly that future generations will never even know you existed. And you're comfortable with that responsibility? Chen nodded. Someone has to be the monster that hunts monsters, Commander. Someone has to be willing to do what needs to be done when civilization is threatened. We accepted that role long before we reached the stars. As they finished their meal, Vextar found himself looking at Admiral Chen with a mixture of respect and terror. This pleasant man who enjoyed pasta and made small talk about the weather was part of a species that had appointed itself the galaxy's apex predator. They had decided with calm certainty that they would be the final solution to any threat against innocent life. "One last question," Vextar said as they prepared to leave. "The other council species, do they know about what you really are?" Chen's smile was gentle and terrifying at the same time. "They're learning, just like you did. And just like you, they're going to have to decide what that means for how they interact with the rest of the galaxy." He stood up, leaving payment for both meals. "Thank you for dinner, Commander. I hope this has been educational. Please give my regards to your superiors and let them know that Earth looks forward to a long and peaceful relationship with Kethmore." As Admiral Chen walked away, looking like nothing more than a pleasant tourist, Vextar realized that the galaxy had fundamentally changed. They weren't just dealing with another spacefaring species. They were dealing with a race of apex predators who had learned to disguise themselves as civilized beings. And the most terrifying part was that they genuinely were civilized. They really did want peace and cooperation and friendship. They just happened to be willing to exterminate entire species to protect it. Vextar sat alone in the restaurant for a long time after Chen left, staring at the images of Earth on the walls. Beautiful, peaceful Earth, with its blue skies and gentle weather. The garden world that its inhabitants had carved out of a frozen hell through 10,000 years of unrelenting violence. He finally understood why the humans had named their restaurant Olive Garden. The olive branch was a symbol of peace. But olive trees, he now knew, grew best in soil that had been thoroughly fertilized with the remains of those who had threatened that peace. When he returned to his ship, Vextar updated his report to High Command. Earth's classification was changed from Class 3 Paradise World to something entirely new. Class O, Apex Civilization. Approach with extreme caution. Recommend absolute peaceful intentions at all times. In the classified addendum, visible only to the highest levels of Kethmorian command, he added a single line that would reshape how his people viewed their place in the galaxy. "We are no longer the apex predators of known space. That distinction now belongs to the humans. Recommend we never give them a reason to prove it."